Hey friends, welcome. I am so glad you are here for the first ever If Only I Knew episode with Rebekah Howell. Today we're going to dive into graduate school, scholarships, acceptance letters, and the all-important gap year. Should you? Shouldn't you? It's a really big deal. I know a lot of you are waiting for your letters and you're not sure what to do. So we're going to break it down for you and her process. We're also going to talk about teachers and how important they are and what you need when. So let's dive right in, put on your headphones, go for a run, cook, clean, whatever you do while you listen. But let's get down to business. Rebekah, thank you so much for joining me on, this is the first.
I'm so honored.
Inaugural show of If Only I Knew, and I couldn't think of anybody else who I wanted to be my very first guest than a wonderful musician, but an even more wonderful friend. So I'm just so excited to have you and for you to just share your amazing knowledge with us about music and life and just kind of how it all comes together. And you know, you're so gracious to be with me from Houston. You're not even home. You're at a friend's wedding and you're taking time
Right.
out of all of that to be with me. So that's just shows everybody like what an amazing friend you are, really. Thank you. So let's get right into this. I have so much I want to talk to you about. And things I would love for you to share. Now, obviously, the name of the show, If Only I Knew, right? If people are going, why did she name it this? Well, we're talking about tips and strategies for today's young artist. And the name came to me from the idea of thinking about back to 18-year-old me and all the things I wish I knew, right? If only I knew this, if only I knew that. Would my path have been different? Would things have gone a different way? And so now we have the opportunity to take everything that we've learned and gleaned over the years and share that with younger artists. And I'm really excited about that. You know, I wish that there had been something like this when I was, younger to listen to and go, oh, okay, what can I learn? What don't I know? What do I need to know? So that's what we're doing. That's what we're providing. So by having, wonderful professional musicians like you and all the others that are going to come after you on here to they get a front row seat to the best information about being an artist today. So that's where we are. And that's why we're doing this. So with that, we've talked a little bit ahead of time, but with that, if only I knew, I would love for you to go back a little bit, 12 years or whatever. And what would 18-year-old Rebekah wish she had known getting into the business?
Oh man.
I know that's a big question. It's an enormous.
It is. Yeah, it's a definite big question. So I would say one of the first things that is really, really helpful to hear is that not everybody's path is the same. And there's no cookie cutter path. So you'll get a lot when you're in school, you'll hear a familiar, path like, okay, do your undergrad degree, do your master's degree, go do a young artist degree, go get a manager, and then you have a career. Right. And I have to say that's just not how it happens for everybody. And that's totally fine. So me in particular, my path was kind of that, but not exactly. So I did my undergrad degree at Baylor University in Waco, Texas. And I ended up doing 5 years in undergrad. Surprise, surprise, for whatever reason. 5 was the right number for me. And then I ended up doing my grad school auditions twice, had to do them twice, 2 years in a row. I did get accepted my first year, but it didn't feel like the right step to go ahead and, start that. And so I ended up doing 5 years in undergrad. And then I had this gap year where I taught voice lessons and did lots of competitions and auditions, but nobody had told me I was going to have a gap year. And it was a little troubling at that time because I was thinking, oh no, I didn't. Now I'm going into grad school and I'm 2 years older than some people who went to grad school, but it ended up being fine because I actually had some real life experience and more audition experience than a lot of folks who had gone straight from undergrad, only doing 4 years, straight into grad school. So pros and cons, right? So it took me a little bit longer. And then I went to Indiana University for my master's degree at age 24, started at 24. And then I did 2 years there. And then, a lot of folks right after grad school is when they get into a young artist program. I did not. I had yet again another little gap time.
And failure, so Rebekah. I'm an absolute failure. I mean, you didn't.
I know. It's like, oh no, I didn't get XYZ. I must really stink, or I must need some extra help. And it's like, yeah, no, you're fine. And I think we met when I was doing a competition during my first gap year in between undergrad and grad school. Yeah. When I went and I had time, this is, gap years, pros and cons, all of this. But one of the things that a gap year gives you time to do is to take auditions and to do competitions, that if you were in school, in classes, in production for your school opera, all of these are valuable experiences, but they take up time in your schedule. And so if you want to go do a competition, you have to get permission, and you have to, ask to be released, and you have to ask for all of these things. If you're in school, if you're in undergrad or grad school or a young artist program, you are not entirely in control of your schedule. And so you have to ask for permission to go do these things. If you have a gap year, I'm just telling you, your time is your own. And while that's a little bit daunting, it's also incredibly liberating because you can fill it with wonderful things like teaching your first voice lesson to someone else and learning how to own your own technique by explaining it to someone else and having to help them through that process of becoming a better singer. Or you can fill it with times where you go coach with somebody that you've wanted to have a coaching with, but for whatever reason, they weren't the coach assigned for your opera that your school was working on, or whatever reason. Maybe you want to go have a voice lesson with somebody that you've never worked with before, just to get another opinion or something. You have all of this wonderful time. Go take a class at a community college in a foreign language where you have actual hands-on, grammar practice and all of that. I never did that one, but I did get to go study in Germany in the Goethe Institute when I was in grad school. So anyway, that's, as the witch from Into the Woods would say, that's another story. Never mind. Anyway, but when you have these gap years, you have all of this time and you have to use it wisely. That's what I would say. A gap year is not a bad thing. It's never a bad thing to have extra time as long as you use your time wisely and invest it. So,
can I tell you how much I love that you brought up the gap year? You don't know this. Now, you know that I've been busy building a course called Audition Breakthrough. But what you don't know is that I have a whole lesson about the gap year.
I love that.
And the controversial gap year, because I realize it's controversial and some people listening are going to freak out and go, whatever. And honestly, I think even, let's be honest, some parents, when they hear their kids say, I think I need to do a gap year for whatever reason, that's scary because they're afraid. Are they quitting? Are they giving up? But I think there's, like you said, there's pros and cons to everything. But I think there are way more pros to a gap year than cons. So I love that you brought that up because that's validation for me and what I was thinking and what I was teaching and what I was sharing. So that's fantastic. And you made a comment about applying or auditioning for grad school. I actually didn't know this, that you did it twice. But again, it was before you and I met. So, I've done that. So I'm curious, was your decision not to go because you weren't thrilled with where you were going or your options, or, what was that? Like, this isn't right. I'm not going to spend my money on this, right? Because you're spending money.
Right.
Schools, even
Right.
scholarships. That's my other issue with gap year. It's an extraordinary amount of money for grad school. So if it's not 100% the perfect fit, you need to say no, right? If it's not the teacher you want, if it's not the program for you, why are you going to spend potentially $40,000, $30,000 a year in debt for something that is not the perfect fit for you?
Right. Well, I'll tell you. So my first year when I was auditioning, I was also finishing my 5th year at Baylor, right? So I'm in classes, taking competitions, doing auditions. And at that point, I had a very successful undergrad career, if we can call an undergrad education a career at that point. Like, on paper, my resume for an undergrad student was pristine. I had been given opportunities to do lots of roles at Baylor, and I had done my first Get Paid to Sing Young Artist program in 2014 at Chautauqua Opera, and all of these things. Really great resume. And so I go and I do these auditions for grad schools, and oh no, I hadn't done that because 2014 was the summer after my 5th year. Anyway, still, resume looked really great for being a soprano, because there's a lot of us.
2013, because you and I met in 2014.
Yes. So 2013, I hadn't done Chautauqua just yet, but I had done another young artist program and won several competitions, distinguished myself as a young, promising singer. Right. And I had been given a substantial scholarship at Baylor, which I'm very thankful for, because I still remember when I was auditioning for undergrads, my dad said, well, if it's not a full ride, it's going to be a short ride. so let's be real. And so I was thankful. I ended up, with a great scholarship package to Baylor, and I go and I do these auditions my first time around, and I only auditioned for 2 schools. Okay. And they were really competitive schools. It was Indiana University and Cincinnati Conservatory. I got waitlisted for Cincinnati. And I got like a quarter financial aid package from Indiana. So it was facing a decision. I mean, full disclosure, Cincinnati.
I appreciate this.
Yeah.
I appreciate this so much. People need to hear this. This is real life.
Yeah.
These are the decisions.
Yeah. Real talk. Here we go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So at Cincinnati Conservatory, what most people don't realize is they will only take specific numbers of specific types of voice types. So they did not need a light soprano. Yep. They didn't need one. It wasn't
way. Yes. They already know which operas they're casting. And so there's a very specific, and so you not getting in doesn't mean that you didn't have a fabulous audition. But if your voice isn't going to be in the opera that year, you're not going to get in. And
too bad.
Yeah. And they're usually deciding on their repertoire usually up to 2 years ahead, but you don't know that.
Right.
It's not released.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're trying to do your grad school experience at a certain time in your life and they don't need you at that time, it's just not going to be a good fit.
Yeah. Right.
Unfortunately. And that's just the way things happen sometimes. Anyway, so I got waitlisted for Cincinnati and was disappointed. And then Indiana was the only other school that I had auditioned for. Again, a huge program. And I only got offered a quarter of the amount needed to cover my expenses. And it was like, oh, I cannot rush into this decision. I don't feel comfortable signing up for that amount of debt under these circumstances. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a year. At that time, I started teaching voice lessons when I was the summer after freshman year of undergrad.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So at that point, I had been teaching voice lessons for all through undergrad, had a thriving studio in Waco where I was going to school during my 5th year. And so I thought, you know what, I'll stay here. Waco's a fine place to be based for a while. I'll keep studying with my teacher. I'll keep working with my coach. I'll keep teaching my voice lessons. And then I'm going to do every single competition that I can put an application in for, because I want more audition experience. Because if something, oh, and that was the other thing, I was not pleased at all with my Indiana audition. Wasn't pleased in the least. And sometimes it's okay. I recently sent you a recording, Cherie, and I asked for your feedback, and you were like,
yep. Mm-hmm.
You said, no, that's not you. And it's okay. Everybody has an off day, and sometimes you scrap it and then you make it again. And then the next one, it's like, oh, there I am. You know?
Yeah. And so represent yourself. So you knew you didn't represent you. It was, everybody has a good day.
It was a bad day. Everybody has a bad day. And my bad day was on the day that I auditioned for Indiana the first time. There you go. Anyway.
And you know, you talk about then going and doing those competitions and stuff. And of course, I'm glad you did a gap year, because I might not have ever met you.
I know.
Since I was the accompanist for one of those competitions, which you won. Okay. So let's just talk about how fantastic all of that was for you.
Right.
So I love how thoughtful you were about your decisions. And I think so many people would feel the pressure of like, well, I got in. So how can I say no? I know the money's not there, but I got in, and the pressure to accept that. But the reality is, and there's no polite way for me to say this, and we're going to talk about money. I know we are. Look, we're not doctors. We're not lawyers. You know, my friends who are in those fields who I've talked to, and they've racked up crazy amounts of debt, but they also know that they're going to be getting big payback, big whatever.
Yes.
That's not the reality for our profession.
Correct.
You have to weigh the realities of expected salary in the future to the kind of debt that you're taking on. And the reality is, even if you make it big, and I'm talking big, like Renee Fleming, you know, something of that sort, you know, first of all, it's 1 in a million. Let's just be honest about that in our industry. You know, and even at that, they have a comfortable living, but I don't know that I would say I don't know a filthy rich singer, right? I can't.
Yeah.
Anybody. I'm sure there's somebody if I thought hard enough, but I just can't think of anybody. So I'm just impressed by your really level-headed decision to say, hey, this is a bad day. I know I can do better. I know I can get more money. I'm not quitting on this, but I'm going to go do these competitions, which really, I think, did help you tremendously for coming back. And then now, obviously, you did go to Indiana, get in again the following year, I'm assuming.
Well, I'll tell you that now this is interesting. This made that decision difficult. So the next year when I did my grad school auditions, I auditioned at Baylor.
Yes.
Which I hadn't wanted to stay at Baylor, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to audition. We'll see what happens. They love me here. At least it would be a good offer. So I auditioned at Baylor. I auditioned at Boston University. I auditioned at Boston Conservatory, and Cincinnati again, and Indiana University.
Okay.
And I got a full ride plus from 2 schools.
Wow.
I got a small financial aid offer from from 2 more. And then Indiana gave me exactly the same offer from the first time around.
Okay.
And the 2 that had given me full plus,
yes,
one was Baylor and one was Rice.
Okay.
Rice University, which is a very prestigious school.
Yes.
And so it came, and I knew I didn't want to stay at Baylor because I had been there. I felt like I had gotten everything that Baylor needed to offer me. And I love Baylor, and I love my teacher from Baylor. He's still the one that I send, video clips to and say, what do you think about this vowel? And all of these things. but I knew I needed to jump out of that pond and swim in the ocean, or at least a lake. And so, so it came down to Indiana and Rice. And at the end of the day, I made the choice to go to Indiana, even for less scholarship, because I knew I had a role offer, because I went and did their auditions for their fall shows and beat out 27 other sopranos for the role of Adele in Die Fledermaus.
Yes. Right.
And I knew I was going to get to study with Carol Vaness.
Teacher.
Yeah.
Mentor.
Teacher. It was huge.
Mentor. Yes.
Yeah. And I felt like Carol and I had a better understanding of how each other felt about technique and how we communicated about technique than the teacher at Rice and I did.
Okay. Right.
So it came down to a decision of, okay. And I had two singer friends from my studio at Baylor who had gone to Indiana on smaller financial aid packages. And then by the end of their time there, they had been awarded more scholarship and had been given teaching opportunities at the school as an associate instructor. Okay. And so I knew, if I go in and if I prove myself and if I knock their socks off by singing Adele, it is likely that I will have more financial aid by the end of my time there than the beginning of my time there. Okay. And that happened.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a gamble. It was
a gamble. It wasn't. I know what you're saying, because you had the role, and right, we all need to talk about that. Like just what you were saying about Cincinnati is, what benefit does it do to go into a program if you may not have the opportunities that you need, right? The whole point of any program is to have access to performances. And if you're not going to be able to perform, then what are you spending your money on? What are you spending your time on? I mean, you get lessons with somebody who you look up to and your mentor. Of course, it's wonderful, but we really have to have those performance opportunities. They're really critical to our career, to forming that career. So that's amazing. I actually didn't know that you picked the school with with the lesser financial package. I just kind of assumed it was the better financial package. It
was not.
So so that was a bold move, but I love how you thought about that, right?
I mean, it became almost just as good, but
by the end,
still,
right. No, but you know what? It's back to that teacher. And this is something I say all the time too, is like that your mentor is everything. And I hate to say that, but it's true. And I don't just mean, Carol Vaness and, herself, wonderful singer, but also wonderful instructor, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of wonderful artists out there who aren't necessarily good teachers, right? You have to know what you're dealing with. And I always encourage people, to work with somebody who, and I'm assuming you'll agree with me on this from what you're saying, is that you want to work with somebody who has had success in the career that you're hoping for yourself. I think that's really, really critical. Or at least someone who has a track record. Like you can look at their students, right? There's some amazing voice instructors out there. They themselves did not have a huge career, but look at their roster of students and go success, like everything is just everything, really well. So I think that's what you're looking for, a track record of success, whether it's themselves personally or prior students. And Carol had that, and you knew that.
Yes. Yeah. Not that the other teacher at Rice didn't.
Right.
Because they had quite a few successful students as well. I mean, it's Rice University. Everybody comes out of Rice is great, right? But I felt like, Carol and I really clicked, and also she was the teacher that I needed at that time in my development as an artist, because for my money, your undergrad teacher is the one who is going to teach you how to sing.
Yes. Foundation.
Yes. Good technique, understanding the voice, what's actually happening. And I studied with Robert Best at Baylor, and he is a brilliant pedagogue. He studied his teaching pedigree. He worked with Barbara Dosher, who is a very, celebrated pedagogue and published, the functional unity of the singing voice. Really, really brilliant. And not only that, but he had that track record of producing singers who went and succeeded really well. I remember when I was a high school senior, we went to the big tri-state area Nats competition.
Yes.
And we went to the finals. I don't know that you know this story either. We went to the finals for the senior and grad division students. Okay. And we literally had a tally of which teachers had the most winners. And Rob Best Studio had the most winners out of the graduate and senior students. I mean, we were looking at that because I was considering him, or I was considering going and studying at Oklahoma City with the teacher who had trained Kristen Chenoweth.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, and I had a voice, I had met her, and I had a voice lesson with Rob and with Dr. Best, and we clicked great. And then he had all the students who won, and it was like, well, this is a no-brainer.
That's amazing.
So,
yeah.
And that turned out to be a great fit there. And I think, without a doubt, he was a huge part of, and still is a huge part of being a mentor in my life and helping me through that time period in my development as an artist. But then when I was going to grad school, I had spent 6 years studying with Rob Best, mind you. No one knew my voice better, right? Because I had taken 5 years in undergrad and then a gap year, right? So 6 years with one teacher.
For your gap year. Okay.
Exactly. And then I went and studied with Carol. And what I learned from Carol Vaness, yes, polishing the technique, making sure that everything was still in alignment, but also I learned artistry and how to use every single tool in my arsenal of vocal technique to create art and tell a story and be specific and bring a character to life and really know, why are you singing this? Make a choice, be specific. Those are two very different things,
Absolutely.
and yeah,
before you have the other, right?
You have to,
that foundation.
Yes.
Artistry is wonderful, but if you don't have that foundation, what are you building the artistry on?
Yeah. It's like if you're going to paint, if you're going to make a piece of visual art,
yes,
if you don't make sure that you're painting with good paints, if you're working with nice color pencils as opposed to crayons. Yeah, exactly.
My daughter's Crayola. I can't be Van Gogh with that. What are you talking about? I don't know.
No, not entirely. So, yeah.
Oh, this is fantastic, Rebekah. I thank you for sharing all of this. Isn't she amazing? I cannot wait to have her back next Thursday to finish our convo about the pros and cons to young artist programs, what to do if you don't get into one, and the number one most overlooked thing you could be doing right now, no matter how young you are, to advance your singing career. But for now, we want to hear from you. What's the biggest insight you are taking away from this conversation? What inspired you or helped you? Comment below because we want to hear about it. And by the way, if you would love to have these videos sent right to your inbox, then subscribe to our newsletter right below. We only send one letter a week because I hate spam, and I know you do too. It's filled with tips, strategies, and action items for young artists just like you. You'll get our brand new If Only I Knew videos straight to your inbox and special goodies just for insiders. You do not want to miss out. So keep dreaming, keep practicing, and keep sharing your music with the world. Until next week.
Rebekah.